Okay, well, let's get started. Welcome, my name is Matthew Weathers. I work for Biola's Department of Distance Learning. And I'm going to kind of give you a couple of my ideas on videos and living in a visually oriented culture. I want to start with this psalm, though. Psalm 96 says this, "Oh, sing to the Lord a new song. Sing to the Lord all the earth. Sing to the Lord, bless his name. Proclaim the good news of his salvation from day to day. Declare his glory among the nations, his wonders among all peoples." So here's King David saying, hey, look, we need to glorify God, and we can do that by singing a new song. I wonder what the cultural equivalent today would be. What is the new song of today? How can we use new technologies and new ideas to proclaim God's glory? And so that's a little bit about what I want to talk about. I'm going to talk about living in a visually oriented culture, and my hope is to kind of inspire you to think of ways that you too could make the visual happen or make videos yourself and participate in this grand scheme of communicating in a visual way. And so I'm going to do that by talking about two things. One is the importance of video, and I'll give you a quick historical overview. And then the second major half of what I'm going to talk about is how you too can participate, how you can become part of the conversation and part of this new thing that we're in. So first of all, I'm going to spend some time just talking about where the idea of moving images and the visual fits in, maybe even going as far back as the broad history of human activity. So by this I mean, what is it that human beings did and took time thinking about or doing? And so for a big part of human history, people ran around looking for things to eat. But then about 10,000 years ago, they said, no, let's settle down and plant things. And so that was a major shift in the way a major shift in human thinking and culture. And then about 200 years ago, 300 years ago, the Industrial Revolution, we stopped growing food and spent more time making things. And then I would say that maybe now we're living in the information age. It's too close to the time to sort of put a date on it. But maybe we're shifting now from making things to making ideas or talking about ideas. I suppose the service industry age, these are just broad categories, right? But in any case, I think it's a true statement that we're living through a revolution in the way that people do things, the way that human beings think about things and what we spend our time doing. And I think that's exciting. I like this example. Speaking of the information age, when was the first online wedding? Now, what I mean is that the bride and groom, I don't recommend this, I'm just saying, the bride and groom, they met online and they did their ceremony. They were in different cities and they said their vows online. And so my question is, when do you think that happened? Or broadly, what decade did that happen? Any guesses? The 80s? Other guesses? Is that too soon or too late? What do you think? The 90s? No, it's actually earlier than the 90s. It's earlier than the 80s.
70s?
It's earlier than the 70s. It's the 60s, but you're all thinking wrong because you forgot that it was the 1860s, and the telegraph actually changed the way that people communicate more profoundly than the internet did, because before the telegraph, in fact, before the telegraph, it was the quickest way to get a message from one place to another was to actually, put it on a horse and gallop as fast as you can somewhere. But then trains came along, so trains were being invented around the same time. But we've sort of experienced this kind of change in communication over the past 100 years, 120 years. If you're interested, by the way, in the story of this, I have two suggested readings for you. The Victorian Internet is a great story of how the telegraph and in the 19th century, how it changed society. And they actually have pneumatic tubes in New York City that you would write notes and put them in these, you know, the old school where you communicate with a bank teller that way. Some of you are old enough to remember that. But they had this whole system in New York City. They're a packet switching network that they sorted packets of actual physical notes. And then also sort of more generally about how human culture is spread. Guns, Germs, and Steel is a good book, and if you have Netflix, you can watch a PBS show on it. It's kind of it's an hour-long show about that. Anyway, so back to this idea of communication. A long time ago, you had to actually be in the same room in the physical presence of someone. You just talk to somebody, right? But then with the invention of writing, somebody could write something down and communicate across distance. You didn't have to be in their physical presence, and in fact, it broke the barrier of time, too. Somebody could write something down and it would be preserved for the ages. Printing, that's just the same kind of a thing, but mass-produced. And so if you had a printing press, then you could extend writing to be for a whole huge audience. The telegraph and telephone, they made it possible to communicate instantly across long distances. And then kind of extending that was broadcast, radio and television, one person talking to many people. And in order to be a producer of this kind of content, you had to be a big company, or it ended up being that there's a few big companies that dominated the three big television network. But then in the 70s, with Ted Turner and the other pioneers of cable TV, we started narrowcasting instead of broadcasting. Like, oh, let's talk. Now you have like the Animal Planet, right? Or Home and Garden TV, and so there's 500 channels you can watch. And I would say that the internet is another way of communicating. We're not quite sure exactly what all the consequences are yet, because again, we're still too close to it. We're still soon. It's still pretty near to where we are now. But in general, what I think is that allows people to do all of these kinds of communications in different ways. And so, again, some suggested reading if you're interested. Tim Wu talks about all of these different industries, the telephone, movie industry, and how it may be affecting what we do in the internet. I want to read this quote from Kevin Kelly. This is about 10 years after everybody sort of woke up and realized that the internet existed, and it was kind of a 10-year, this is in Wired magazine, but I love the phrasing of this. Even just 10 years into the internet revolution, he said this: "The accretion of tiny marvels can numb us to the arrival of the stupendous. Today at any net terminal, you can get an amazing variety of music and video, an evolving encyclopedia, weather forecast, help wanted ads, satellite images, all wrapped up in an interactive index that really works." And so we're used to that now, but remember that these things kind of, I like that phrase, the accretion of tiny marvels. Like, oh, I don't have to use the yellow pages anymore, I can look it up. Or, oh, I can look up this online encyclopedia. Those are cool little things, but there's been hundreds of those in the past 10, 15 years, right? And maybe we forget about that. So it's easy now to sort of take that for granted. You have to, in the same article, he quotes a couple of things. This is one of the vice presidents of ABC, and he said, and this is back in 1989, he said, the internet will be the CB radio of the 1990s. Because here was this idea of radio, and people thought this is going to be great. People could communicate across distances. Everybody will have a ham radio. And sure enough, if you have a ham radio or if you have a CB radio, you can do that. But people don't, it's more of a hobby thing, right? Nobody gets on and talks to a bunch of people over the radio waves that much anymore. And he said, well, the internet's going to be like that. Yes, you can send email email was invented in 1970 something, and you could send email for 15 years at this point. And he said, well, okay, fine, it'll be this fad thing. Because at ABC, they were thinking, well, who's going to make all the content? Who's going to create the videos? Who's going to write the online content? There just aren't that many people that would be willing to put stuff there for free. And so that's why he said that wouldn't work. And I also remember reading this blog post, well, Newsnet, or, oh, I forgot, Usenet, that's what it was called, complaining that here's this great thing called the internet, and we can send texts back and forth. But now that this brand new thing called Mosaic is making it possible to ship images across the internet, that's going to clog the whole network and ruin the whole thing. Which, of course, it was exactly the opposite. I wish I'd kept that post, because it's such an entertaining thing. Like this, it's this whole screed on how images are going to ruin the internet, and of course, that didn't happen. Okay, so the question is, who will write all the content? Where is that going to come from? Wikipedia took about 100 million hours, 100 million man-hours to put together, and where did people find the time to do that? And the answer is, according to Clay Shirky, he wrote this book called Cognitive Surplus. He says that actually we as human beings have a lot of free time. And Americans spend 200 billion hours watching TV every year. And every weekend, they spend 100 million hours watching just commercials. So that's the same figure as how long it took to make Wikipedia. And so that's where you can find the answer to that. That's where you can find that extra time. Clay says that the world has 1 trillion hours of free time every year. And so that's where the free time comes from. We have the time. And it's a little bit like the predictions back in the 1900s, Mercedes-Benz allegedly, this is one of those urban legends, I couldn't find the reference for it, but Mercedes-Benz was convinced that the worldwide market for cars would never be more than 4 million cars. Why? Because you couldn't find that many chauffeurs. There wouldn't ever be more than 4 million chauffeurs. Of course, the answer is we drive our own cars, same thing. They thought we wouldn't ever find enough editors and content writers for the internet, but we became the content creators ourselves. Okay, so we have this grand new thing, grand new way of communicating. We have the time to do it. Let me shift and talk a little bit about the human imagination and what drives people, what interests people. I would say two things. One is story. We love story. We love the narrative. We love understanding how things work. What is it that electrifies the human imagination? What ignites our interest? Story is one thing. And also image is another thing. And so those two things have historically ignited the human imagination. And just in the past 100 years, we've been able to put them together into moving images in a really powerful way. First with film, and then with television. So here we are putting story together with images, and it birthed these whole industries. There's actually another industry, but just like people don't want to be merely passive consumers, the other thing they want to do is participate. Does anybody know another place where there's story and moving images where you participate? It's bigger than the film industry. Well, that's a good example. Sometimes people get creative and participate in film in showings. Video games, that's right. Video games are this big industry. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, in the first 5 days that it came out, it sold $775 million worth of games in the first 5 days. So that's up there with big film releases, right? And in many respects, the video game industry surpassed the film industry. And then another way that people participate, in another big way that moving images have become part of our culture, is in online videos. So here's some statistics. YouTube has this page where they keep up to date all the statistics about YouTube. And all of these are just amazing, mind-blowing things. I'll read a couple of them. 60 hours of video are uploaded every minute, or 1 hour is uploaded. 1 hour is uploaded to YouTube every second. I like this one too. More video is uploaded to YouTube in 1 month than the 3 major US networks created in all 60 years. So 60 years of programming, YouTube equals that in 1 month. And so, these are some interesting statistics. Let's compare that. Neil Postman wrote this book called Amusing Ourselves to Death, about moving from a text-based culture to an image-based culture. Let me just show you some sales statistic. This is the one of the world's top selling novels of all time. I'm not sure if it's the top, but it's near there. It was published in the early 1900s. Actually, this woman sort of secretly wrote this manuscript for years or a long time, and she shoveled it all into a suitcase and brought it to a publisher and said, "Here, would you be interested?" He's like, "Yeah." But then he started reading it and he fell in love with it. It was published, and that's the only thing she ever published. It's the only novel she ever published. Anyway, look at these numbers. 1 million in 1936. It passed 2 million in 1962. About 1976, it was maybe around 15 million. Remember that date. And now we have more than 30 million copies of Gone with the Wind have been published. Let's compare that with the world's or the country's list of most watched television broadcasts. Here's a list of the most watched television broadcasts, and look at this. Interestingly enough, they made a movie version, a TV version of Gone with the Wind in 1976, and on the first night, almost 34 million people watched that first show, more than twice as many people that had ever bought the book in the whole history of the book up to that point. So that night, more people were exposed to Gone with the Wind than the whole history before that, which I think is amazing. That's in 1976. Let me just show you. Let's just see what the difference is. Stop, she said suddenly. She hardly heard anything he said. Certainly her mind had not taken it in, but she knew she could no longer endure with any fortitude the sound of his voice when there was no love in it. He paused and looked at her quizzically. "Well, you get my meaning, don't you?" he questioned, rising to his feet. She threw out her hands, palms up in an age-old gesture of appeal. Well, I'm gonna skip down. Where are we at? There he's saying, "I couldn't live with you and lie to you, and I certainly couldn't lie to myself. I can't even lie to you now. I wish I could care what you do or where you go, but I can't." He drew a short breath and said lightly but softly, "My dear, I don't give a damn." All right, so that's the famous scene. They changed it a bit.
Here, Frank. You go. Where should I go? What should I do?
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
So yes, the most famous quote in one of the most famous movies of all time is actually a misquote of the book. Well, a rewriting of the screenplay. But 33 million people saw that version, where only 15 million had read the actual version. By the way, just looking at this list again, notice that this right here, the network, there's the big three right here, and notice the dates right here. The 70s and 80s, that's kind of when it peaked, when everybody's watching the same thing. That doesn't happen as much anymore. Just because, I think it's because we moved into the era of narrowcasting. Like I was saying with cable TV. The most recent date up here, well, there's the Winter Olympics, 1994. Oh wait, here we go. This is the Super Bowl, Saints versus the Colts in February 2010. And some people bemoan the fact that, oh, we used to be a nation where we were all watching the same thing. Everybody go home and everybody was watching I Love Lucy. Now everybody's watching all these different channels. But in fact, I think that was an aberration of American culture. Like before TV and radio, people were doing a bunch of different things. And then everybody sort of gathered around the TV and radio set for 50 or 60 years, and now we're spread out again. I think it's probably a good thing in general that this doesn't happen anymore. But what does happen is that now we're gathering around our laptops and mobile devices, and anybody guess what the top most viewed YouTube video of all time is? I gave you a preview already. Justin Bieber made a song, Baby Baby, and it got 742 million hits in just 26 months. They posted it February 19th, and it's already got that many views. And if you look at just the math of that, that's 26 million per month. That's about as many people as had bought the Gone with the Wind book. And there's a 620 people have watched it. If you've never seen it, I will subject you to 30 seconds just so you can be culturally aware. All right.
Just add to the hit.
No, I downloaded that. I added it once when I downloaded it, so don't worry, I didn't add to the hit count. But you can imagine people watching over and over and over again. Here's the top 6.
What's that?
That was almost 27 million per month. Almost, more than 800,000 per day, 37,000 per hour. So yeah, several thousand since I've started this presentation. Here's the top 5 of all time on YouTube currently. And the interesting thing is the top 5 are professionally produced music videos. Number 6 is Charlie Bit My Finger. And then I actually scrolled through the top 30 just to see what they were. And interestingly enough, almost all of them are music videos. Here are the ones that aren't. And here's the last one. So these two I had never seen, and I just don't understand. Part of it might be that 70% of the audience is outside of the U.S. This is some Asian actress, I think, putting Mentos in a Diet Coke. It's not the original one. And it just sprays all over, and it's kind of funny. This is sort of an animation of 2 kids in a bathtub, and that's it. So I don't know why that's famous. This one is famous because little kids love it. Have you guys ever heard of the gummy bear? Now, this is interesting because it's a video that is made in probably 30 different languages. So they recorded the song in 30 or 40 different languages. Here's a little bit of the English version. Anyway, if you want to watch it in other languages, you can watch Gumi Bjorn in Swedish or Gumi Nola, I think, in Spanish. But the cool thing about that is it's sort of this international thing. And I bet you if you added up all those together, that would be higher on the list than number 30. But the interesting thing about that is that now it's not just the professional companies producing things, although they dominate the top 30. We live in a remix culture, and you can take videos and you can remix them and do something different and new with them. Here's Charlie Bit My Finger plus a little bit of a remix that somebody did. It's just a clip of.
Ow! Ow, Charlie! Ow! Charlie, that really hurt.
And then somebody remixed it. And in some cases, the remix is more important or makes the original famous. And so Antoine Dodds was on a TV, or they interviewed him about some crime. I don't need to explain. But somebody made a version, they added music to it, and then also I'll play a Numa Numa. So these are the cases where the remix made the original famous. Okay, so those are two different examples. In one case, there's a TV broadcast that a bunch of people saw because it was interesting. He's sitting there complaining about the crime happening in his neighborhood, and then they made music out of it. And so if you add music, that's one way of remixing. The second example, there was already a music video that these Romanian guys had done, and it had, some people had seen that, but then this guy just posted that for his friends, and that's what made them famous to the rest of the world, is that little video of him singing their song, or acting out his song. And so I think it's interesting, and actually having thought through this and looking through this, I originally had these two as things that spark the human imagination, but I think that it would be appropriate to add a third one, music. I think it's not just story, it's not just image, but I think that music really drives human emotion. And so I think that, actually maybe this isn't quite the appropriate picture. There we go, music. That's probably a better picture for that. Okay, so hopefully I've convinced you that moving images and video is an important part of our culture and changing the way that we consume information. Let me tell you how to participate, what you can do to be a part of this. And here's my rough outline. I'm going to talk about coming up with an idea or coming up with content. If some of you went to the session on content management, or that's an interesting idea. And also I'll talk briefly about some of the tools, what you need in order to do that. And then also you need a platform to publish these things. So let's talk about these in order. So first of all, the idea, what's the big idea? What do you want to communicate? And I think that, like I said, we live in a narrow-cast world, that any narrow topic will be interesting. Some people, it's just their personality. They have an interesting, unique personality, and so they just go be themselves on the internet. And there's several YouTube people that do that. If you have a passion for something, use existing content. If you have a blog, just go find the content that gives you the most traffic and go do that. I think that there's a lot of stuff out there that could be made into a visual form, and then it would be consumed in a different way by this culture. Just a couple examples again. I tried to go find like the most obscure video bloggers I could find, people with hardly any hits at all. And here's 3 quick examples. Here's a guy, the first guy's a photographer in LA.
I'm here with Miss Sonia, and Sonia is actually from Costa Rica. We're here today, and
he just talks about going out making pictures, what he does to find good images and how to do that. So that's one. Here's a second example. She talks about how to train your dog.
Probably the most important command that she's ever going to learn, and that is her name. You can't get your dog's attention, and how on earth do you expect her to tell them to do anything like this or come back to you?
But today I just want to share something.
Another example.
On my heart, that the Lord laid on my heart. I believe God is really calling His people to spiritual growth, to grow up. Paul in 1 Corinthians 3 talks about coming to the Corinthian church and not really being able to minister to them on the level he desired to.
Okay, so those are some examples of people just speaking to some narrow audience of something that they're passionate about. And actually, when I was looking for, I thought, I wonder if there's any Christian video bloggers out there. It didn't seem like there were that many, and so I think there's a lot of room for that. And so go make some content. Okay, second, the camera. What type of equipment do you need? So first of all, you already have a camera in your laptop right up there, or in your phone. So that's the cheapest way. So I'm going to show you sort of the low end and the high end. Or you can go spend about $100 for a digital camera. That's the kind of, maybe $200 or $300. $150 for one of these GoPro cameras. Or even more expensive, a couple $100 or up to $1,000 or so, digital SLR cameras. Or you can go buy a Red if you have lots and lots of money. Those of you who are film people know what I mean. So there's a whole range. You can do stuff for free that you already have. And of course, there's an infinite amount of money you could spend if you want to go the professional route. And the interesting thing about this is that it depends on what you're doing. I think you can do most of what you need to with just a simple little camera, with just the simple free things. One thing I wanted to show you a video of, this GoPro camera, you can mount and take places that have never been seen before. I'm going to show you a little clip of this guy in a wingsuit. Have you guys seen those wingsuit things? Now, I was thinking about this the other day, and I think that the camera itself is what has inspired these videos, because people could, and inspired the technology to make wingsuits, because people could have done that 30 years ago. You know, the technology existed to do that kind of thing. But unless you have somebody coming along and participating via a YouTube video, via a camera, it doesn't communicate very well. It doesn't communicate to other people who are doing the same things. And also, I think advertisers like Red Bull and some of those kind of companies are willing to sponsor people like this guy to do it full time. Whereas if you can't see what they're doing, that sort of changes the experience. But let me just show you this impressive thing that this guy, Jeb Corliss, did. So we get to participate by going along on this only because of the camera, because of the technology. Watch how close he comes. I think he didn't mean to come that close, actually. See his shadow? Look at that. Same thing. That's like 6 feet, maybe 10 feet. Anyway, if you like that kind of stuff, you can go watch hundreds of videos of that kind of a thing. Okay, so video editing software. So I'm going to talk about just a few more things. Video editing software, and then where to publish things. And then what we'll do is go look at some of the professional editing equipment and things over in the production center, if you guys want to take a field trip over there in a few minutes. So there's some software that's free. A lot of Macs have iMovie on it. Windows has Windows Movie Maker. And actually, those are pretty low-end things, but they work okay. You can do simple blog posts, like the ones that we saw when I showed you those, if you want to make a blog about training your puppy, that's good enough. Actually, you can do it on an iPad too, the newest iPad, Avid Studio. Avid's a professional company, and they sell software that costs hundreds of dollars, but they have an app that's only $5 on an iPad. Or you can spend a couple $100 for a consumer level or prosumer level editing, like, well, I'll show you some images in a second, Avid Studio or Adobe Premiere, that kind of thing. Or you can spend as much money as you want on professional editing stuff too. So basically, it requires learning. This is the iPad version. Requires learning a little bit of how to use the software. You put these clips together, you add sound, you can mix and match, and then it lets you put the scenes together and then publish them on Facebook or YouTube or whatever. This is a picture of Avid Express. This is a little bit higher end, where you have different layers of tracks that you can do. You can overlay different video and do lots of different editing on it, different effects and so on. This is Adobe Premiere Pro, and this is a hard program to learn, but if you take the time, you can do all kinds of fun stuff in it. And this would be good enough for anything that any of us would want to do, unless you're making movies. Even if you're making professional movies. I think some professional movies are made with Adobe, right? I don't know. I see Hedwin maybe nodding his head. Let me just show you I have a few clips from this guy named Zach King. He's here at Biola, and he's a film student. And he made his kind of fame and fortune by showing people how to use video editing software, specifically a software package called Final Cut. And his last name is King, so that's a pun on his name, Final Cut King. But this is the type of thing he does. He shows people how to do it, and then he makes these cool, interesting stories.
Videos I think we ever shot. It took us about 15 to 20 minutes here. We had this light here. It's just a regular lamp.
I'm showing you the how-to video first. I'll show you another one where it's the other way around.
Shot. You can see it looks like kind of like a fire flicker happening there.
And then he explains how to do this kind of stuff. He has some other videos on how to do all this stuff in Final Cut and the different masks and different layers and things. So he adds flame, reflection, and smoke, adds that onto this picture of the piano. And then here's the video that he made from it. Notice that it has a story too. It's not just images, it's a story, and it's there's music too. Uh-oh. And then he has links to encourage people to engage, subscribe. He often says, hey, go down and comment below. Here's another one of his, this is probably his most famous video, the Jedi Kittens one. I don't know if you've seen it. You'll recognize this place.
You two are grounded 1 week. No Star Wars, and I want all this cleaned up. Anyway, I want to walk through your
and then he has a how-to about how he did some of the. We're just watching pieces of it.
Every shot was tripod locked down, and we get a blank shot, which basically means nothing in it. So the blank shot is going to be used to mask out me carrying in a ship or a kitten or something. So, for example, when I'm carrying in the ship in the first shot, you don't see me, but I was really holding it just by using some masks. In this shot, we're gonna take the 5D. I've got a wide-angle lens, and we're gonna duct tape. I'm a Juju. This is Luke Skywalker on my back. And we're gonna take. What have you done? Stop climbing then. We're gonna tape this on, so we've got the 5D here.
Well, so anyway, I think he does a really good job of engaging his audience because he makes entertaining videos, but then you see the behind the scenes and even just the little things like, oh, there's the cute kitten. I suppose it never hurts to have a cute kitten in your video too. In fact, I think that's part of why he did it. He's like, oh, there's all these kitten videos, what if we just made one? And so, he has 177,000 subscribers who watch his videos or who subscribed on YouTube, and 37 million people. Okay, so just quickly, what type of computer do you need to do this? Well, guess what? An iPad 3 is good enough. You can do it on your phone even. Probably an iPad's better because sometimes you need space to be creative. But you can do stuff on your phone. You can do stuff on your mobile devices. Actually, a laptop is probably good enough too. You can spend as much money as you have. Somebody will be willing to take your money. But if you have a powerful desktop, you only need to spend $2,500 or so to get one that's really good. You can spend up to $5,000 or $10,000 if you have the money. And we live near Disney and the industry, the filmmaking industry, and so we're lucky enough to sometimes get industry executives in here. I had this guy that worked with Pixar, and he was saying that when they made Toy Story, It was 1995, and today you can get software and computers that are as good as what they used to make Toy Story back then. And so we have the tools now that you can do something as good as that. Now, of course, you also need hundreds of hours of animators to do stuff really well, and you also need to have a really good story. That's what Pixar is famous for. But as far as the technology, that exists. So today on a laptop, you can go do that kind of a thing. All right, then the final piece of the puzzle is that you need a platform to publish on. Now, the bad news is that in order to set up a web server that can effectively serve videos to hundreds or thousands of consumers, you actually need hundreds of thousands or millions and millions of dollars to do that. It costs millions of dollars to set up those servers to have a worldwide audience. That's the bad news. But you all know the good news, right? Is that somebody did it for you and they let you use their servers for free. So you can post your stuff on YouTube or on Vimeo for free. What do they get in return? Well, they get advertising, and so that's the easy part of the equation. You get professional grade web hosting from the best companies in the world for free. I suppose I would add one more thing to this list. So here in review is the list. And I'll end with this list. Actually, I'll show you one more video. You need a good idea. You need tools. You can spend as little or as much as you want. You need a platform to publish. You can get professional grade, world-class hosting for free. But you also need lots and lots and lots of time. This is a good round number. If you're going to make 1 minute of video, plan on spending 1 hour of editing. So a 3-minute video is going to take you 3 hours of editing at a minimum. That's not counting the taping or the recording. And actually, some documentaries have like a 90-to-1 ratio. They record 90 hours worth of video for 1 hour of actual documentary. Or I think reality shows are even higher, maybe like 150 hours per episode. So it's a monumental task of editing. But the good news is that it's all possible and that you could do it. I think each of you have a story to tell, and I think each of you could do that. Even whatever you're interested in, just go forth and make something interesting. I thought I'd play you just some memorable YouTube video, just as a reminder of how important video has become to our culture. Just 60 seconds of some interesting things. The cat, okay, go, remember that? Oh, I don't know if you remember that guy. So there's lots of things that we can see, and memorable things that the whole world can view now because of this technology, and I think that's an exciting thing. Not only just the memorable things of people doing stupid things, but also beautiful things. I like to show, in my class, I talk about how we can see things that nobody had ever seen before, and I show this picture, and I say, what does this look like? And they say, well, that's the moon. And I say, well, why does it look different? And they look, and it's because it's the backside of the moon. For millennia, people wondered what the backside of the moon looked like. We saw the front side of the moon, but now we can see it. Any questions, or, well, actually, any comments, or what do you guys think? Yes?
I have a question. Could you compare and contrast posting your video on YouTube as opposed to having it on a podcast?
A podcast, you mean like on your own website where the video's on your website?
Yeah. I had just heard someone saying that he was hesitant because he didn't want someone else to own his videos. He sounded a little paranoid.
Well, we live in a couple things. First of all, you can easily put your video on YouTube and use their professional grade hosting stuff and then embed it in your own website. And so you can do that. And there's ways to lock it down so they can't find it on YouTube, they can only find it on your site and so on. But in general, I would say we live in an open source world, in a remix world. Let people remix it.
Yeah.
Maybe the auto-tune guys will make you famous, you know. So. Had you guys seen like that clip I showed at the end of lots of different things? Have you guys seen most of those videos? I'm thinking of putting together like an hour-long show of like, here are the internet videos that you must see. These are the culturally relevant that everybody else has seen. So, yeah.
How can you make talking head type teaching more effective, more interesting?
So his question is, how do you make talking head type teaching more interesting? I don't know. I think you have to add story, first of all. That's an important part. And if you have a compelling story, that might be good enough. But in general, adding other content is a helpful thing, like illustrating things with other types of videos or other things is the only way. I mean, nobody wants to watch talking heads since the Lincoln-Douglas debates, right? So Neil Postman talks about that. He said, people used to go and watch Lincoln and Douglas, President Lincoln, when he was running for Senate, not even president, and there's these long transcripts where they'd sit in the same room having detailed arguments back and forth. And you'd see in the transcript, and they say, well, since we have been going for 3 hours, let us take a 90-minute dinner break and we will come back. And they came back for another round hours of just talking. So we live in a different culture. I don't know that you can ever go back to that. I don't know if that's a bad thing or not. I mean, God wrote a book, right? He gave us text. He didn't mail us a Netflix DVD as much as we wish. So in some sense, we do have to always come back to that text-based
But
thing.
didn't Jesus, I mean, even Jesus' miracles were visual aids.
Yeah.
I mean, so even the text is telling us.
It's telling us.
Visual.
Yeah, and the parables he said, the miracles and parables he did, he was very visual. But our record of it is merely text now. So, yeah, it's a good point.
One of the slides that you showed that the book sales, maybe it was just the timelines that you chose to display, but it looked like they were accelerating towards the last few years.
It could be. I don't have it easy.
Is impacted by the internet.
That's a good question. We'll see what happens in the next 15 years to Gone with the Wind on mobile devices. I don't know. And somebody brought up in one of the other sessions that kids these days are reading Hunger Games, by the thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions, right? And so I would say in the 70s and 80s we sort of peaked as a visual culture. But with the advent of email, then later texting, and now Facebook and stuff, today's junior highers are writing text, even if it's just see you later LOL or whatever. At least they're writing something in a way that I don't think I wrote when I was in junior high. So
It's also being helped by the visual. Hunger Games started to peak when the film peaked.
When the film came out, then everybody ran out and read the books. Yeah.
Do you know of any studies of the effectiveness of video teaching?
I don't know of any studies of how effective that is. I'm not sure. Yeah, we're still trying to figure that out, right? Because 300 years ago, you'd have a teacher and a blackboard and people sitting in a classroom. And now we have a teacher and a whiteboard and a tiered classroom with fancy windows, but it's the same kind of thing.
Well, last year at the event here, they showed there are hundreds of videos of people explaining concepts, like on a whiteboard.
Mm-hmm.
They showed us several, and they were made by students.
Mm-hmm.
And they are very effective to teach a certain concept.
Yeah, so that's kind of along the lines of the remix culture. We live in a culture where people produce their own content, and it's still a little bit tough to find some of that type of stuff, but once the search engines catch up, I think that people will find what they need to learn what they want. And so I think that's an exciting thing. Like I was saying, video editing is hard to do, but there's hours and hours and hours of instructions on how to do that. Yeah.
One little thing I learned that might be useful to other people trying to promote a ministry and get it to the front page of Google for whatever, is when you do a little video promotion, it jumps much higher on Google than just an article or something like that. And so I'll take things where I'll promote with text, but I'll also do a short 2-minute video, and I take the same general idea and I do it to each niche market, and it went from page 20 on Google to page 1, like in 15 minutes. So it really is, so as far as Christians trying to get our message to the world, we need to think in terms of what they're looking for, but just by using video at this point, because it's not used as much, it gives us an advantage in being seen on Google.
Yeah, because the search engines recognize that and value that, because they know that people watch video.
Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Visit biola.edu to find out how Biola could make a difference in your life.